So the very first thing that you want to do is you want to kind of go see if you have TDE in place. And we have some scripts that we'll put up on our website that shows you how you can see if TDE is in place. But next thing you want to do is create that master key. And once you've created the master key, then you'll back that up and make sure that you keep that password. Now, usually don't you need that master key ever again, but it is best practice to back it up. So we'll create the master key and then we'll move on to what I call step two. And step two is actually the certificate setup. So in step two, you will create a certificate, give it a name. You can also give it a subject, which is like a description. But there's a lot of the times this is where you have to choose like how you're going to manage your certificates. Are you going to have one certificate for all the SQL servers in the company? Are you going to have a certificate for every server? Or are you going to have a certificate for every database? Or the last one that we see the most common is they'll kind of do by database type. So we'll have customers that, hey, certain databases with this application get this key, or sorry, this certificate. Certain databases of another application get another certificate. But you'll have to think about that.
Yeah. So with that certificate, then, Derek, I mean, one of the biggest pains I've ever dealt with is going out to a certificate authority and purchasing certificates. Do we have to do any of that with this process?
You do not. You can actually you actually just create it right on the SQL Server.
Okay, so we don't need to be going to purchase a certificate anywhere. We're just using SQL Server created certificates.
So yes, you use a SQL Server created certificate, and after you create that certificate, then you back up the certificate, and you'll get three files when you back it up. You'll get the certificate itself. I usually call it it's a .cer, CER, and then you'll get the key that goes with it, a .key file, and then the password that you use to encrypt that key. And you cannot lose. So that's three things right there. That's the certificate, the key, and the password. You cannot lose any one of those, or you cannot restore your databases to a different SQL server.
Yep. Okay, so we're cruising through this process. We've created that master key. We've created a certificate, and then and we've just backed up that certificate. Then what are we doing next?
Next thing that we want to do is we're going to create a database encryption key. And that's what that does is that associates the certificate with the database. And that's where you choose your algorithm. I usually do AES 256, so 256-bit AES. So you choose your algorithm and you create that database key that associates it. Now, one thing to remember here, and we recently, I guess it wasn't recently, time goes by really quick, but we did have a customer kind of bit by this, is once that key is created, even though TDE is not enabled, your backups are kind of encrypted. And you need that certificate to restore those backups. So we create the database encryption key, and then we actually turn encryption on in that database. And when you turn encryption on, SQL will slowly go through, read the files off the disk, rewrite them back to the disk as encrypted, and that can take anywhere between a couple of seconds and hours. We've seen some customers where it'll take overnight to do the encryption.
Okay, so then that enabling it, and if we're waiting overnight for that to happen, does that really cause any problem on the system while we're waiting for that to finish encrypting?
It does not. The database still works. It's still active. You do have an increased I/O load on the system because it has to read all that off a disk and write it back to disk. So you do have increased I/O load. So I usually do it at a time of low activity, which is usually at night. But the database still works. It just maybe it's a little bit slower.
So just to kind of recap that then, I mean, you're going to go create the master key, create the certificate, back up the certificate, create the database encryption key, enable TDE, and then wait for it to finish encrypting. Depending on the size of the database, that may take a little while, like overnight.
Yeah, and this is where you don't want to get too greedy. Do one database at a time, and don't do them all at a time because you're going to really increase that I/O load on your server if you're trying to do them all at once.
Good point. And who knows? I mean, you do one and you find out that you've got plenty of I/O and it fully gets encrypted in an hour. Maybe you try 2 of them or 3 of them and see how it goes after that. So, an important thing here too is you want to make sure you're going to test that restore process on a non-production server or on a different server, making sure that you've got all the right bits and pieces so that when you do that restore, you know it's going to work. You don't ever want that first restore of a TDE database to be an emergency restore. You want to make sure you do it when you've got time to make sure you've got everything in place.
And that's really important, Steve. You hit on a very important part that I want to expand on. So don't just test a restore back to the same SQL server that did the backup, because that SQL server has the certificate on there. So it's just going to restore like every other restore of an unencrypted database. You want to take it to a server that is either never had TDE on it or a different server that doesn't have that certificate. So you can prove that you can restore the certificate and then restore the database.
Thanks for watching. I'm Steve, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you like it, please click the thumbs up icon. And if you want to subscribe, click subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon to get notified when we have new videos. All right, have a great day.